Welcome to Sisters in Crime Australia and Murder Mondays, where we ask authors about their crime craft. I'm Karina Kilmore. I'm a debut crime writer, a journalist, and a national convener for Sisters in Crime Australia. And we've been celebrating women's crime writing since 1991. Before I introduce Ellie Marney, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Ellie, welcome. You describe yourself as a writer for young adults, obsessive reader and occasional criminal mastermind. You've had a terrific output of books and stories during the past 10 years, including winning a Sisters in Crime Scarlet Stiletto Award and a Davitt Award.
Yes.
Some of your works include the Every trilogy, the Circus Hearts series, and the standalone novel White Nights. In between all your writing, you've raised 4 boys. Welcome, Ellie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Just before we get to questions, can you please give us your elevator pitch for your forthcoming novel, due out in September, None Shall Sleep?
Okay. None Shall Sleep is my YA take on Silence of the Lambs, I guess. So it's a psychological thriller. It's about 2 teenagers, a girl called Emma Lewis, who's a serial killer survivor, and a boy called Travis Bell, who is a US Marshal candidate. And they both have trauma in their past, and they're recruited by FBI behavioural science to interview convicted juvenile murderers.
Oh, wow.
And while that's happening, they get drawn into the hunt for a new killer who's targeting teenagers. And in order to get the information they need to solve that case, they have to talk to a notorious juvenile sociopath called Simon Goodmanson, who's very manipulative, and they never quite know whether or not the information they're getting from him is real. And and so that's the story in a nutshell.
Very multi-layered. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, and it was kind of a dream book to write.
Okay, now we're on to questions. I'm going to have a shuffle and we're just going to see where they land.
Okay.
And here we go. Who are your literary inspirations?
Literary inspirations. I guess everyone pauses after this question because it's very hard to pass out which ones were the most important. Yeah. Probably Stephen King early on.
Yeah.
And then people like Melina Marchetta for YA.
Yeah.
And as far as crime goes, Agatha. And obviously, and Conan Doyle. I grew up on all the Sherlock Holmes books, which is why I ended up, writing a series about a teenage Sherlock Holmes wannabe.
Yeah.
And Thomas Harris is
terrific.
Also really amazing.
Yeah. What started your life of crime? Crime writing.
How did I start crime writing? Good question. Okay, so I probably started by looking at high school library shelves and realising that, in my role as a high school teacher, if I was recommending crime stories to my students, they were going into the library and they were only really finding books by adult authors. So I thought, well, that's not right. You can't always be recommending really hardcore adult novels to teenagers.
Yeah.
And also it seemed like a missed opportunity because teenagers are really interesting protagonists. So I wanted to take advantage of that by writing something from their perspective.
Cool. How many drafts do you write before handing it in?
This is the question that everybody hates my answer to. I write one draft.
You were going to say that.
No, I mean, I'm a progressive editor, so I actually just write and then go back again and again and again until I feel like the bits are all kind of shuffling in the right order and in the right position and all the words are working. And then I don't really make further progress until I've gotten everything right. And then, each new piece that I add, I go back and smooth out all the rough edges and fit it all together. But at the end of it, you end up with a final draft, which, I probably go through again and fix up. And then obviously there's the editing process where things are often shuffled around. Yeah. But it's usually just one draft that has been progressively honed along the way. Yeah.
How much of a profile do you do for each character before you write?
I do quite a lot of character profile work. Mm-hmm. I usually get some ideas for dialogue and scenes and I might jot them down. But once the characters do start talking and you want to know where they're going to go next, you do have to have a bit of an idea of what it is that makes them tick psychologically. Obviously too, if you're writing psychological thrillers, you have to have a bit of an idea or insight into what's going on in their minds and which way they're going to jump in a given situation. So I actually do fairly extensive character profiling and look up books on, for None Shall Sleep, I looked up a lot of books on trauma survivors' experiences and psychological effect of that. And, just trying to figure out what their backstories are. I spend a lot of time on that. Usually the writing's already started, but then I reach a point very early on where I can't make any further progress without knowing who these people are that I'm working with.
Yeah. Oh, cool. What's your top writing tip and what's your top self-editing tip?
My top writing tip is the one that I still have to apply to myself, which is just bum glue. That's the old Stephen King advice, which is it's not going to get done until you sit there and just do it. Yeah. So in that case, it is. It's a little bit like laying brick or something. It's a job and you have to sit down and do the work. Otherwise, all of the wonderful imagination in the world isn't going to get the book written. And self-editing, my self-editing tip, it has to flow. I think for me, it's always about the flow or the rhythm of each sentence or each paragraph as it's going along. And if it doesn't flow, then it's just better to get rid of it, even if it's pretty, if it interrupts the flow of the action or the tension or the flow of the scene, then I don't care how lyrical and beautiful the word is, you've got to get rid of it.
Wow, tough. How important is place in your writing?
It is fairly critical, I think, because particularly in the books that I've written set in Australian country towns and things like that, it's the place becomes, a character in its own right. So, and it forms so much of the background of people's stories, the characters' stories, their histories, the way they grew up. That's sort of important for knowing the characters, is knowing the place where they've come from. So you do have to have a stronger understanding of that. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you write about violence?
How do I write about violence? Yeah. Excessively. I don't know. I'm in two minds about that question because it always seems to be okay to put lots of violence in things, but then I've had email or contact from readers saying, I've never had anybody say to me, your books are too violent. I've always had people say to me, oh, there's a lot of kissing in those books. It's like people do seem to get more upset about sex than they do about violence, particularly when it comes to teenagers for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I do write fairly violent stuff, but I try to make a habit of not centering the victim's experience, I guess, is what I want to say. When you're writing about someone who's been through violent trauma, you don't want to feel like you're rehashing that trauma for the reader, for the reader's benefit, like it's on show.
Yeah.
A traumatized protagonist has to be allowed to share as much of their story as they feel comfortable sharing. And for sometimes also intimating something has happened and giving a few little hints is much more effective than actually showing really graphic violence on the page.
Yeah, great. How much of you is in one of your characters?
Yeah, I don't know, probably a lot. I don't know. I think in my first series and every series, there was a lot of me in Rachel, but there was also a lot of me in Mycroft, in the Sherlock-y kind of wanting to know the secret to everything character.
Yeah.
I think there seems to be one defining characteristic that each of my female protagonists has, which is that they're all really stubborn, which I think is my major characteristic, which is that I'm really stubborn. Oops. But yeah, look, Diana Gabaldon, who wrote the Outlander series, she says that making characters is like a cannibal art. You take a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person, a little bit of yourself, and you mix it all together in a big pot and you end up with this character. Yeah. So that's what I guess it's like.
You've seen yourself in that big pot, obviously, somewhere. What research did you do for your upcoming novel?
For None Shall Sleep. None Shall Sleep involved an extraordinary amount of research because it's set in the United States and it was set in an area and a place that I had never been, and also it was set in a place where lots of people aren't allowed to go. So it's very difficult to get access to FBI Quantico training facility. In fact, it's almost impossible unless you're a member of law enforcement in the States.
Right.
So I had to read a lot of material written by people who'd been there or who'd studied there or who'd graduated from there. I had to read a lot of books related to the FBI and how their daily protocols work, that sort of thing, also about the history of the FBI. Yeah. I knew a fair bit about forensics because I've been writing about forensic scenes and autopsy and stuff like that for a long time, but I didn't know how much forensic detail I could include from the time period because it's also set in 1982. Yeah. So there were a few key forensic things that I was thinking, hang on, did they have that in 1982? And then I had to dig into that. Yeah. So, there was a lot of research involved, a lot of time spent online.
Yeah. What's the scariest thing in your novel?
The scariest thing in my novel is a teenage sociopath. Most people don't trust teenagers anyway. A lot of adults really struggle with teenagers. I mean, like I said, I'm a high school teacher, so I work with teenagers all the time. Yeah. They don't hold a lot of mystery for me, but for a lot of people, once they've left their teenage years, for them it's something they look back on with either nostalgic kind of happiness, I guess, or with a kind of sense of slight shame or embarrassment, or like, oh God, remember what I was. It's a cringe factor, you know.
Yeah.
And I think consequently adults tend to underestimate what teenagers are like, or what they're capable of, or the way they feel in situations. And consequently, yeah, that makes them a little bit scary. You know, you see a bunch of teenagers on a train or hanging out on the edge of the street or something, and you're kind of like, whoa. And the idea of a teenager who's also a psychopath, is kind of like the ultimate.
Oh, it is for me. I'm just thinking about it all. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I am both. I started off as a pantser, and then I have gotten progressively more plotty as I go on. And in fact, I usually start writing without any idea of what the novel's going to turn out like. But by the time I'm only, I might be barely a chapter in or something like that, and I'll like, okay, now we have to plot the story. So I know what I'm doing.
Both is good.
I think you actually are, depending on the project too. It sort of depends a little bit on the project. Some projects you're more suited to pantsing and others aren't.
What's your writing routine?
My writing routine at the moment is non-existent because in lockdown everyone's home. So it's really hard. It's been really hard to find time to be alone and just write on my own. Now school has gone back. My children have all gone back to school, and my partner's gone back to work. I've gone back to work, and I have a couple of days off a week where I can sit down and spend an entire day concentrating. And then on the weekend I try and crunch out, some words as well every day. I just have to have at least a 2-hour block to sit down and concentrate. So if I can find that time during a normal day, if I'm not too tired, or if everyone's gone to bed, or if I've gotten up early, I'll snatch that time from wherever I can.
Wow.
I used to be more disciplined, but ISO changed that.
Yeah, wow. It still sounds disciplined, Ellie. Do you start with plot or character or something else?
I usually start with character. I don't know. Do I? That's a really good question. It sort of makes it sound like I prioritise plot over character or character over plot. But I think without a good character, like a plot is just an idea, a kind of a boring idea, without a compelling character involved in it. So I think my answer is that they come up together, and without each other, they kind of, without the plot, the character's just sort of standing there doing nothing. And without the character, the plot is just kind of boring, like a headline that you just skim over.
Yeah. Okay. What's the best way to dig yourself out of a bad plot hole?
I've done this so many times. The best way to do it is to scream and pull your hair out for a few minutes, and then drink heavily. No, don't do that. You could do that. I don't know if it'd be very productive. That's usually when I call out to my writer friends and say, oh my God, I've done this. What have I done? And how am I going to get out of it? And then brainstorming verbally with people is really good. I find that I rely on that more now than I ever used to. When I first started writing, it was really, I really had this feeling as if I just had to dig the solution out of my own brain, and I just had to sit there and grind it until I found the solution. But in reality, talking to other people, particularly other creative people, and throwing ideas around is a great way to get out of plot holes. I dug myself out of a hole for None Shall Sleep in exactly this fashion, and it was a vast improvement on me just trying to sit there and excavate my own brain day after day.
It can be lonely, can't it, when you're thinking of solutions? And where to go. Yeah,
absolutely.
What's the hardest part about writing a novel?
Back pain. Get a good chair. No. Or find, one of those yoga balls or something. I don't know. You have to sit there and you have to concentrate, and there's no getting around that. You just have to do the work. And that usually involves many, many, many hours in front of your laptop. And it's very sedentary work. So you have to make sure that you take breaks and you hydrate and you get enough sleep and stuff like that. And, but that's the hardest part about writing the novel, is just making yourself sit there and do it. Yeah. You get always halfway through it, and then you just want to throw the whole thing in the bin. You have to get through that. I just remember I've written enough books now that I realise that this is just a thing, and it always happens. It's fine. Just keep going. You'll push through it. It's like hitting the wall.
Right.
And then once you've got through it, you'll be fine.
Oh, this is relating to our other question. How do you write about sex? All that kissing.
How do you write about sex? Well, first of all, again, a bit like the bad comparison, I guess, sex and violence, in the same way that sometimes it's most effectively portrayed by not putting it on the page. Sometimes sex is better if it's hinted and intimated rather than full-on graphic detail. Particularly in YA, less is definitely more.
Yeah.
And I think, I've written a couple of books where I've written sex scenes between characters, or, even morning after scenes or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's really, for YA characters, it's very much about the emotional connection, rather than what slot A parts go into, crevice B or whatever. None of that stuff happens in YA. It's really just, it's more about the emotional connection. You do have to write some of the physical stuff, and you have to write it sensitively. But for teenagers, it's really about what kind of fireworks are going off for them mentally and emotionally at the time of all of this happening. It's such an emotionally charged thing to happen in people's lives, but especially as a teenager. It's so exciting.
That's right.
So, you have
it's a big deal for them. Yeah,
it is. It's a really big deal. You have to be very careful with that too. Yeah.
Do women write different crime stories to men?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's people who would suggest that women write more cozy kind of stuff, but I don't think that's true. Mm-hmm. Certainly, Agatha had lots of twists and turns, and Belle McDermid wrote some really, really bloody, gruesome stuff, and certainly the stuff that I write's can get, there's lots of forensic autopsy details and things like that. So I don't know, but perhaps the emotional focus, maybe on other things sometimes.
Okay.
But I like reading crime by both men and women. So yeah. And
when and how do you work out plot twists and red herrings?
I'm progressively. I do work out, like I said, as I've gotten older and wiser, I've plotted more. Yeah. But often I will realise I'll get to a point in the story that I may have plotted out, and I'll think, oh, yes, I had that all under control. And then when I get to that moment, I'll realise, or perhaps I'll just come to know the characters better by that point and realise that that's not going to work. So we're going to have to do something else, which is, you know, you have to kind of be a bit think on your feet when you're writing, I think, like, and red herrings are a bit like that. I'm a great retconner. I like going back and it's like, oh, hang on, that looks really obvious. Maybe I should go back 30 pages and add a little detail that'll put people off, you know. So, yeah, that's what I tend to do.
We love a red herring. Yeah. And our last question, Ellie, is how would you get away with murder?
How would I get away with murder? I'd probably recruit all my family to help me bury the body. And they'd all stay quiet.
You hope.
I hope so. I would hope so.
Oh, well, thank you very much for being with us on Murder Mondays, and we welcome your book coming out September 1, isn't it?
Yeah. Shall
very
I flash
exciting.
it?
Yes,
Shall I flash
please
it around?
give us a flash. Yeah.
Oh, give us a flash.
Yeah.
This is the Australian cover and that's the US cover.
Oh, beautiful.
So, yeah, I know.
Gorgeous.
They're beautiful. They're really gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been
You're
really
welcome.
lovely to speak with you today.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellie. Bye-bye.
Bye.